We're talking today with Don Alsbro of Benton Harbor, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay, Don, start us off with some background on yourself, and to begin with, where and when were you born?
I was born in Detroit, Michigan, May the 20th, 1940, and the family moved to Plymouth, Michigan in 1944, and so I grew up in Plymouth, Michigan until I went to college.
Okay, and what did your family do for a living when you were growing up?
My dad was a traveling claim adjuster for the C&O. Well, at that time it was a Pure Marquette, and he would, if there was a train accident in California and there was merchandise damaged in the boxcars, he had to go and give an insurance report. And so we made, I remember as a 6 and 7-year-old, we made trips to New York, we made trips to California on business, and but he passed away in 1948, just before my 9th birthday, and that was rather traumatic because I came down the stairs. It was April 29th, 1949. I came down the stairs and my aunt met me at the stairway, and she said, "Don, you're the
man of the house.
You're the man of the family now," and that was it.
Okay. Now, what did your family do at that point?
Well, my dad was, first of all, I thank the railroad, because the railroad was one of the first industries that had some kind of retirement. And through his retirement, and my dad was also very astute into the future. He had purchased an apartment house in Detroit that I think had around 30 apartments in it. It wasn't a big place, but as I remember, my uncle used to come out, because my uncle was in real estate in Detroit, but he would come out and help my mother with reports and stuff. But between the railroad insurance and that apartment house, my mother did not have to go to work, and we had a cottage that was at a lake over by Ann Arbor, by Whitmore Lake, Brighton, Michigan, and we kept that. And so in the summer times I went to the lake, and during the year I was went to school in Plymouth.
Okay, and when did you finish high school?
1958.
Okay, and what did you do after you graduated from high school?
I went to Western Michigan. I chose Western for a couple of reasons. One, I had a football coach who, the coaches were all very, what I would call my surrogate fathers. I mean, as I was growing up, the coaches really helped me out. And one coach asked me, I don't remember, when I was a junior, he was coaching me in track, and I was throwing the shot, and in between throwing the shots, we talked a little bit, and he asked me if I was planning to go to college, and I was a junior then, and I said, I don't know. And he said, and I asked him, I said, why? He was a shop teacher, and he was teaching machine shop, and back in that time, in the 1940s and 50s, tool and die makers and skilled workers were making $10,000 a year working in Detroit, and a teacher was made that year at Plymouth made $4,000, and I said, why? I said to him, because he was a shop teacher, and I said, why aren't you working in the shop where you could make a lot more money than teaching? And he made something that stuck with me for my entire life. He said, Don, he said, I know that I'll never be able to afford a Cadillac, but I'll always be able to afford a new Chevy. And he said, 40 years is a long time to do something that you don't like doing. And that has been my motto. I enjoyed the military. When I went into teaching, I was teaching physical education classes, badminton, bowling, golf, tennis, and doing things that I like to do. But like that coach said, he said, he said, I could make a lot more working in a shop, but I wouldn't want to do it the rest of my life.
All right. And did he encourage you to go to Western, or
No,
did you take that yourself?
well, no, not really. I had scholarships to Michigan State, And we lived about 15 miles from Ann Arbor, and I went to if you wore your high school leather sweater in those days, you could get into the football game at U of M for $1. And I remember Ron Kramer, Benny Oosterman, going to and see some of those games and stuff. But and I was accepted at Michigan. I was accepted at Michigan State. Had a scholarship to State, but I wanted to go to Western. I chose Western Michigan because I wanted to get into teaching, and at that time, Western had a good, and they still do have a good teaching school.
All right. Okay. So, and then when you go to Western, did they have an ROTC program?
Yeah, they did, and there was a requirement, 2-year requirement. You either took PE or you took ROTC. Well, I was a history major because I always enjoyed history in high school, and I was a PE minor, and I knew I was going to be getting a lot of physical education. So I asked them about ROTC, and I decided at that time Western, well, they had 1,500 cadets in the ROTC program. It was a huge program, but so I said, well, I'll check out what the ROTC is like.
Okay, and what was it like?
It was interesting. It wasn't anything. As I recall, we wore a uniform one day a week, the day that we had drill, and you had the 2 years, and then you were automatically able to. You just didn't have any more unless you signed up, and you had to be selected for the advanced ROTC, which was junior and senior years. And I'll never forget this Captain Ritz, who was had been in, I think he'd been in Korea. He was an interesting individual, and he said, "Why don't you sign up for the advanced program?" And I said, "Well," "I don't. What does it entail?" And he said, if you decide that you want a commission, you get a commission, and also I said, well, how long do you have to go on active duty? And he said, 6 months. He said, if you want, we have 2 programs. We have a 6-month program and a 2-year commitment. And I said, how many people that applied, asked for the 6 months got it? And he said, everybody. And that was the truth. Unfortunately, September 1961, I think it was, I was sitting in front of the TV, and President Kennedy announced that because of the Cuban Missile Crisis, that there were no longer any 6-month enlistments in ROTC, that everybody was signed up for 2 years. It was a minimum 2 years. So watching that TV program, I'll never forget, it was in September, no, it was in October, and I said to the guy that was sitting next to me, I said, there goes another year and a half of my life. And so, but in my junior year, my roommates, 2 of my roommates, Jim and Ken, decided they were having some scholastic problems. I was not having any scholastic problems. I did graduate with a 3.7, so that, but they talked me into, they were took off a semester, and we drove out to, we had not a rental car, one of those, back in those days you could drive a car, if somebody wanted your car driven to Florida or California, you could drive it, and so we picked a car that wanted to go to Phoenix, and we went to Phoenix, and so I spent about a month out in Phoenix and had some interesting escapades and stuff, and came back and went back to Western in the fall, and I had a little bit of a problem because I was in the advanced course, and I had a semester. And normally, if you drop out in the advanced course, they automatically send you to the draft board. Oh. And I didn't. But I was able to get back into the program at ROTC, and then I got my orders to go to Germany. And I hadn't requested Germany. I was you had to go to the Infantry Basic course, and that was a 10-week program, and then I was scheduled for 2 years in a 3-year tour in Germany.
Okay, let's back up a little bit, and sort out the chronology. When did you go to Phoenix? When was that roughly?
That was in the spring of '61.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I guess when we were doing your background and so forth, you had told me that you got your commission January of '61. Did you mean January
wait a minute.
'62? Or
Yeah,
Okay.
January 6th.
because so when you were watching Kennedy talk about the Cuban Missile Crisis, you were finishing college at that point, or were you in infantry basic, or where were you then?
I was in the advanced program, and I was
Okay.
a junior.
Okay, so you're still in college then in October.
No, wait a minute, I take it back. I was in the advanced, I was in the senior year.
Berlin Crisis is '61,
Okay,
and then Cuban Missile Crisis is '62.
okay, and that was Cuban Missile that Kennedy changed your requirements.
Right.
And
Okay.
so, yeah,
So when did you actually graduate from college?
I graduated from college in January of '63. January '63.
All right.
Is that what I put down there?
Well, God, let's see. You're born in '40, so let's see. Well, you had originally given me 60, but basically, if during the Cuban Missile Crisis you're still finishing college, that's the fall of '62.
Yeah, but I got commissioned in January, but I didn't go on active duty until June
Okay,
of '63.
right.
And from
that was-
'63 to '66, we were stationed in Germany. I had a 3-year tour in Germany.
Okay, so then in the early months of '63, that's when you're doing the infantry basic course. Is that or
No, the infantry basic was June 25th,
okay?
'63. It was a 10-week course.
Okay.
And finished in the end of August, and
All right,
went to
and then you go to Germany.
went to Germany.
Okay, describe a little bit, so basically they're giving you time to finish your last semester in college before you actually report, or, because you say you get the commission in January, but you don't go to school until June, or did you just have time off?
It was just time. It was just time off.
Okay,
And I did some substitute teaching in the Kalamazoo school district. And the interesting thing is that because of that couple months of teaching, I entered into the teacher retirement system at an early age, and I gained about 3 years.
right, okay. So now you describe a little bit the infantry school. Where was it, and what did you do?
The infantry school is at Fort Benning, Georgia, which is out in Columbus, Georgia, and you spend 10 weeks of learning how to be an officer. It was very Georgia is not a good place to be in the winter time, in the summertime with the heat in the 90s and the red clay, and I actually, in one of our field exercises, I was carrying a machine gun which weighs 20-some pounds, and we were going across a field and up a hill, and I ended up in Martin Army Hospital in Fort Benning with heat exhaustion. So it, but anyways, from Germany, went over to Germany, and I had gotten married in May of '63,
Mhm.
and I wanted to bring my wife over and my family. We had let's see, she was a 3-year-old daughter, and that's a stepdaughter that I graduated, that I adopted, Lynn. And anyways, I found out that I was set up to spend 3-year tour, and I was going to be getting out. But in order to bring the family over, I had to go volunteer indefinite, which meant that I had to serve 3. Wait a minute. No. I was set to finish my active duty tour in 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And but by bringing my family over, I was I had to extend it to another year, and and at that time I had to go what they called volunteer indefinite status. And when I asked the personnel officer how many people that went volunteer indefinite got discharged, or is there any problem? He said no. He said all you do is you ask for it, and we have no problem. Well, so in December '65, I had received a letter from my football coach, who had become a principal in Comstock, Michigan, and he wanted to know if I was going to be getting out of the service in the next couple of months because he had an opening for a football coach. And so in January, I sat down and typed up a letter to the Department of Army requesting release from active duty effective June of 66. And the letter came back about 3 weeks later from the Department of Army saying that you will not be released until you serve a tour in Vietnam.
Okay.
And
we want to back up a little bit here. Where were you stationed in Germany?
we were stationed in Kitzingen, Germany, which was a 3rd Infantry Division, and you know, I had a neat experience in Germany because of my background. I became what they call an A&R officer, sports officer, and I was officer in charge of the 3rd Infantry Division baseball team. I coached the brigade basketball team. I was assistant coach of the brigade football team, and I coached the baseball. Anyways, I was head of the sports program at Kitzingen Larson Barracks in Kitzingen, Germany, and we played units all over Europe. And at that time, the Army was very into sports, and what they wanted to do was to provide entertainment for the troops, so they wouldn't go downtown to the pubs, to the gas houses, and get into trouble and stuff. So we played the and when I coached the division baseball team, 3rd Infantry Division baseball team, the division commander for the 3rd Infantry was Major General A. O'Connor, and he later became Chief of Army Personnel in Pentagon. And he just, General O'Connor was an interesting individual. One time I was with him, and I forget where we were at, but he asked me if I was going to stay in the Army, and I said, no, I want to go back and coach, do what football, and be a teacher. And he said, you can do that in the Army too, Coach. And he said, I can get you, he said, I'm pretty sure I could get you some kind of an assignment with athletics and stuff. So I said, no thanks, sir. And but a few months later, he went back to Washington, and he went to the OPO, which is the Officer of Personnel Operations, and he was chief of Army officers, the entire Army officers. And that conversation that he had, he said, you know, you could go into West, you could get an assignment at West Point or something like that and everything. So I went to get back up a little bit, I sent my application into the Department of Army, and they said, I got a letter about a month later saying that you submitted your application too soon, 90 days prior to your release. So 90 days would have been February the 25th, I think it was, or something like that. So on the 90th day, I sent another letter in saying I request relief from active duty, and they sent a letter back saying, request denied, you're under orders to go to Vietnam. When you get done with Vietnam, you can request a termination. And at that time, in 66, I had no idea well, I had basically been hearing things a little bit about Vietnam, so I did have an idea of where it was at, but it was something that was completely out of, never in the realm of possibility that I was thinking of, and so I ended up going to Vietnam.
Okay. Now, while you were living in Germany, was that a good place for American servicemen and their families to be? Did they like you there?
Oh, yeah. No, that was, and matter of fact, my wife and I, next month, are headed back to a river cruise from Frankfurt to Nuremberg, and it'll go right past the house in Kitzingen, Germany, on the Main River that we lived for 3 years. And but no, Germany was, some guys didn't like it, but it was great duty. And mainly, like I said, I was coaching the division track team. I remember I went to coached, we had our division championships at Nuremberg, Germany, at Soldiers Field, and that was the field that Jesse Owen stood up Hitler at, and but it was we traveled all over Europe playing the. My basketball team played the Air Force team at Spangdahlem and Wiesbaden, and but you know, I was doing what I loved doing.
Okay, so that was pretty good.
So the problem is that when I got my orders for Vietnam, my brigade commander, Colonel Hollis, later became General Hollis, said, you need to go back to the infantry and do some infantry experience. So for 90 days, I was attached to the 15th Infantry Division, which is the third, the Audie Murphy's division, or not division,
the regiment?
his well, at that time, regiment when Audie was in, but it had become a battalion now, and so I went to the 15th and that was right on our base there. But I went there and got some little bit of field duty and stuff. But so when I went to Vietnam, it was the thing about the 1st Cav Division was an unbelievable unit. They in August let's see, I went back home in July of '66, and I had a letter from the 1st Cav welcoming me, and I wasn't scheduled to arrive until the middle of August, but they were welcoming me to the unit, and they said that you're going to be a civil affairs officer, and you're replacing, and you'll be in the 11th Aviation Group, which was the headquarters for all of the helicopters in Vietnam. The 1st Cav was a new concept. It was air mobile, and there were more choppers in the 1st Cav than there were vehicles. I mean, if I needed to go somewhere, I could get a chopper to go there easier than I could get a Jeep or a deuce and a half. And but the 1st Cav sent this letter to me, welcoming me to the unit, saying that you will be replacing Captain Coley, who is the civil affairs officer for the 11th Aviation Group. And then I got a welcome letter from Captain Coley. So, you know, the 1st Cav is in the middle of a war, and yet they sent me the welcome letter. They had everything was set. And when I got to Vietnam, and so many individuals that went to Vietnam were initially told they were going to do this, and when they got there, it was completely changed. I went through the processing replacement depot in Saigon, and got on the plane. Spent 2 days there orientation, and got on the plane for An Khe, and went to An Khe and asked for the 11th Aviation Group, and went to the 11th Aviation Group, and my job was exactly what they told me it was going to be. It was civil affairs, and I spent a year working in the village, and the experience that I had there was one of the best experiences of my life.
Okay, now to back up again and fill in a few more pieces. How much time did you get in the States before you had to go to Vietnam?
30-day leave.
Okay, so you got the full 30-day leave.
Yeah.
So you didn't have to rush because you got the letters right away or something like that. Now, did they do any kind of preparation for you to go to Vietnam? Any orientation, training, shots, anything like that before you left?
Yeah. I went to the Jungle Warfare School in Fort Sheridan in the Canal Zone in Panama, and that was a 15-day jungle warfare, and I got my patch.
Jungle patch, yeah.
Yeah, and but that was a tremendous experience. It was you did rappelling down cliffs. We crossed a bunch of rivers that we had where the water was maybe up to our chest, and it was tremendous training. It was done at Camp Sherman in the Canal Zone, and it was a tremendous experience.
Okay, because you really hadn't been in anything like that except maybe a very hot Georgia when you were doing your infantry training. So this is really a level up for you.
Yeah.
Okay, and were they trying to tell you much of anything about Vietnam when you were doing that, or were they just putting you through that course?
Not really, just, well, we had experience where, we were out for the first week we were in the barracks, and the second week we were living out in the field, and we had to construct our own living quarters out of leaves and vines and stuff, and then we learned to identify different snakes, and it was interesting.
Okay. And then how did they get you out to Vietnam?
Well, that was interesting because I came back to Charleston, and all of the planes were Charleston, South Carolina. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, the planes were all on strike, and that was right during a pilot strike. And so they told me, they said, you're on your own to find your way out to California. I had a voucher that I could give as a ticket, but I ended up. My wife came. I went back to Michigan, and we spent a couple days together. And then we took the ferry over from Muskegon, the Clipper, Milwaukee Clipper, from Muskegon to Manitowoc, Wisconsin, and then you took your car on the ferry, and she drove me to O'Hare, and I caught a C-130 Air Force plane. There's a base there right at O'Hare, National Guard, Air National Guard base, and caught that C-130 and that was going to California, and I got there they had stopped a couple of places 5 or 6 days later. It was really, you were on your own to find your way out to, I forget how long this airplane strike lasted, but it lasted a few days.
Okay. And then did you go to San Francisco or somewhere else to fly out of?
Yeah, we went to Oakland. We processed through Oakland, medical records and all that sort of stuff, and then flew out of Travis. And I think I'm the only person in the United States Army. I had, between my 2 tours in Vietnam, plus in 1970 they were allowing individuals, instead of taking a 1-week R&R trip to Thailand or Australia or Hawaii, you could take a 2-week trip to come home. And so I think it was in February of 1970, let's see now, 71, that I came home to Florida to spend 2 weeks with my wife. And I tell you what, getting back on that plane, knowing that you had 4 months to go in Vietnam, was tough. And I can see where a lot of, but I knew basically I was going back. My second time I was going back to a desk job, but you know, for a soldier.
You were saying here as you were starting this story something about you were the only person in the U.S. Army to. Was there something distinctive about that?
Oh yeah. I was the only person that I know of to fly. I flew 6 times from Travis to Vietnam, and all 6 times it was on a C-130. Now C-130s are Air Force planes in which the seats are canvas straps, and you're facing to the back instead of the front, and all of your the stewardesses are the lowest ranking enlisted people on the plane. So you'd have Spec 4, usually Spec 4 was about the lowest, I think. But 6 times I flew back and forth where other people were flying on Flying Tiger or one of the charter airlines that they commercial airlines, Pan American and all the rest of them. And but I flew on those C-130s, and that's a 24-hour trip on a C-130. And we stopped at Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines, but it was a way that. And the thing of it is, the difference between most soldiers today, the units deploy together, and that was something that they didn't do in Vietnam basically. And the thing of it is, you get on a plane with 150 guys, and you don't know anybody on a plane. It's lower. The ranking is all the way from PFC PFC to Colonel. And the thing of it is, you went to Vietnam as an individual, not knowing anybody, not knowing anything, and you went to your unit. So you were called what was a cherry, and you were. It took 2 or 3 months for most guys to get into their unit and get accepted and everything. So
Yeah. Now, where did you land in Vietnam the first time?
All 3 times it was Tan Son Nhut.
Okay, so the big airport outside of Saigon.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you went to what they call the repo depot, and if you were there for the first time, you got a 3-day orientation, and if you had been there before, they just transferred you up to the nearest, you went to the air base at Tan Son Nhut and flew to the nearest base.
Mm-hmm. Or wherever you were assigned to.
Yeah.
Okay. So what did that orientation for Vietnam consist of?
For officers, it wasn't a whole lot because we had just been through jungle school,
Right.
and they had that on our. We had that on our record and stuff. It was just a little bit orientation of the country, and it was for officers. It was pretty basic,
Mm-hmm.
very short.
Okay, so very simple stuff about sort of the culture and the place and so forth. All right.
I'll never forget when you got off the plane, you load right on the bus, and they were former like school buses, and the thing is they had gates,
Grates on the windows?
grates on the windows and everything, and that was to prevent hand grenades from being thrown into the bus. But that was your first experience to Vietnam.
Okay. Now, how did they get you to An Khe?
You go to the repo depot. They had C1, not C1, yeah, C-130. No, the caribous at that time. The caribous were and C-130s, and the C-123s were flying to the major bases like Pleiku, Da Nang, Cameron. And it was pretty easy to get from one place to another.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, where in Vietnam is An Khe, for someone not too familiar with it?
An Khe is on Highway 19, right in the middle. It's in what's called the Two Corps area. It's Pleiku is up about 45 miles north. An Khe is 45 miles west of or east of Quy Nhon. Quy Nhon is on the ocean, the ocean.
Probably you're inland, so you're probably still west of Quy Nhon.
Huh?
Inland is going west, so if you're inland.
Yeah. I mean, but and so you're going southwest.
Yeah.
But so you're going east to southeast to Quy Nhon. And the thing is, Highway 19. There's Highway 1 that goes all the way from Hanoi all the way down to Saigon along the coast, and then there's various major highways that go. But Highway 19 was the major route in the central area, and I'll never when I got there in June, the Koreans had just gotten there in that time period too, and the Koreans played a very important part in my life. The Korean soldiers.
Okay. So you arrive at An Khe, and so they're expecting you. You get your assignment. Then what happens?
Well, I just went to I went to An Khe, got off, and said that I was I handed them my orders. My orders said 11th Aviation Group, and there's the base camp, Camp Radcliffe, had a shuttle system going from the airport to the different major units, and so I got on that and went to my unit, and Captain Coley had just left. I did not have a chance to thank him for his letters and stuff, but I had a civil affairs team. We weren't authorized really a civil affairs unit, but the commander that we had, Colonel Lukens, I gave my hat to him because he was a super individual. Every unit over there had a civic action team, and some of the units did more than others. A lot, and in our unit, I think we had the best civic action program. We had the best civic action program in the division, and I think one of the best in Vietnam. But when I reported in, they said, welcome, and you've got a sergeant. I had Sergeant Fletcher, who had been a crew chief on a Huey and had been shot down 7 times, and so they told him he was with the 229th, which was a assault helicopter company. In the first cav, the 227 and 229th had the Hueys, the 228th had the Chinooks, and between those 3 units, they had over 400 aircraft. And if you needed this was the air mobility concept that was developed at Fort Benning by General Moore, and at that time he wasn't a general, he was Colonel Moore, and the Fort Benning, the school there, and the air. If in the first cav there, if you needed a vehicle, if you needed transportation, you could get a helicopter a lot easier than you could get a vehicle.
Okay. Now, how did you get oriented to your job? Did the sergeant or a junior officer explain to you how it worked?
Yeah, Captain Cooley had left, and so I didn't get a chance to meet him. But Sergeant Rep had been for about a month, and so he had a little bit of experience. And I had an interpreter, Vietnamese interpreter, Sergeant Rep, and Sergeant Rep was a super individual. I think he was about 23 years old, 24. He could speak not fluent, perfect English, but his English was fantastic. And he had graduated from college, and was a fantastic. I often wish that I knew where he was at, because, anyways, we had a civic action team that we had we had a medic that we took out to the village for a sick call. We had a Sergeant Rep, we had Sergeant Fletcher, and myself, and we would spend basically every day from around 9 o'clock or so to sometimes we'd be out there until 10, 11 o'clock at night in the village, because on Monday nights, what they had done was there were 2 hamlets, An Dan and Tan Tao, and those 2 hamlets combined into the village of An Khe, and the village was inside Camp Radcliffe. Camp Radcliffe was the largest military base in Vietnam, and it sat right inside Camp Radcliffe was Hong Kong Mountain. And there was a first cav patch up on the side of Hong Kong Mountain that you could see, the Vietnamese could see for miles and miles, and it was a huge first cav patch. And but anyways, there's 2 villages that the 11th Aviation Group had adopted, and I think they just adopted on their own, was inside the base camp. And Vietnamese, when they bury their ancestor, when family members die, they have a burial right near the house, and so these individuals, this village had a lot of individuals that were going to have to be left. The military gave them, I think, the equivalent of $200 or $300 to buy building material. So a lot of the grass huts, because prior to when the village, it was all grass huts, and with their money that they got, some of the villagers were able to build brick houses, and but I got there just when the village started moving in May, and was complete. It was getting in the finishing touches in August when I got there, and we had a very active civic action program.
Okay, so basically you're talking about them moving from the grass huts into the new buildings, and so did you change the location of where they lived?
Yeah, they took and moved. They had about a mile move. They moved them from where they were to along the Song Bai River, which this river, Highway 19, going from Quy Nhon to An Khe, they were right on the river was on their eastern boundary, and the first Cav base camp was on the western side, and then it was
So were you moving?
the highway was on the south side.
Okay. Now, was the new location still inside the confines of the
No,
base?
no,
You were moving them off the base.
They moved
essentially.
them off the base for security purposes and stuff. And but our civic action team, we had this civic action team that the village gave us a small building that we could use, and we brought it, fixed it up for a dispensary, and we had an army medic that came out 6 days a week to treat, and he saw between anywhere from 30 to 50 individuals a day for minor injuries. If they had something major, there was the An Khe at that time, which was about, I think, around 25,000 people, was a couple miles away. But An Khe was considered to be it had no electricity, it had no water, it had no sewerage, it was very, very primitive. These people that were living in the village in a few month period had gone from very primitive, not knowing anything, not experiencing any modern conveniences, to electricity and water and stuff like that.
Okay. So if they did get seriously sick or injured, would you send them? Was there a hospital in An Khe?
There was a hospital that we did a couple times. We came close to delivering babies, but we were able to get them to the major. It wasn't what we'd call a hospital. It was more like a dispensary, but it had and it wasn't staffed by. It was Vietnamese people that ran it, but the interesting thing is that this village had it was the village chief, 2 hamlet chiefs, and the police chief, and they were the 5 individuals that I worked with for the year that I was there. And we took and built they gave us a little building that we turned into a dispensary. On the outside of the dispensary, we built a shower point. We had a wooden structure that had a 55-gallon drum on top, and we punched holes in it, and the water was heated by the sunlight. And we started a program. When I first came to the village, when I came there, I would say 95% of the individuals had impetigo, which is a scalp disease. And what we did was we had a bunch of some candy, suckers and stuff. So anytime an individual got a cut, they would come into the dispensary, and before we treated them, they'd take a shower. And if they took a shower, then they got a sucker. Well, I'll tell you what, we had kids coming in for the minor, just a little pinprick, and you couldn't even, but they wanted that candy, and they were willing to take a shower. So when I left a year later, I do not think there wasn't a single child in the village that had impetigo. It was a way to get that cured. We took and built a huge playground next to the dispensary. We had a basketball court, we had a volleyball court, we had a softball diamond. The engineers that were civilian engineers that were working with the cab built me a set of swings and slides. We had swings and slides, and these kids had never seen a basket. They never had seen anything like this. And we had kids, and our unit would come out on Sundays to play volleyball against the officers, or the enlisted would come out and play volleyball against the villagers, and the whole village would turn out to watch it and stuff. But so it was we had an open area in the middle of the village that we did programs, and on Friday nights we had a building. There was a building. It was like a one-story building was used for storage stuff, but it had a blank wall, it had a wall on it. And so we showed, on Friday night, we showed movies, and we would show a Gunsmoke, or we would show different movies, and these people would see. I remember in 1966, we showed one of the space shots, and these people had never seen anything like that, and they didn't. And but it was on Friday nights we would show the movies, and on Monday nights we had English. Monday night we had English for the kids. We would have anywhere from 20 to 50 kids, and then on Wednesday nights we did math. And one of my individuals, I had a 5-man team. I had a sergeant interpreters, or not, sergeant interpreter, Sergeant Rip. I had Sergeant Fletcher, who, like I said, had been a crew chief and been shot down so many times, and he knew everything. He'd been in the military for 15, 20 years, and he'd come back in, so he had to take a cut in grade, but unbelievable guy. And myself, and then I had a Spec 4 driver, so there were basically the 4 of us.
Yeah, and then the medic when you had the medic.
And the medic, so basically a 5-man team. And but we would take in, like I said, on Monday, Wednesday nights, and Friday nights, we were usually out in the village till 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. And at Christmas time, we went from village house to house and gave the kids. I had a RSVP program, Return Vietnam, so from Columbia, South Carolina. And the individual, John Wharton, I'll never forget his name, had retired from the Navy, but he arranged to have all these Conex containers filled with candy and all kinds of things sent to our unit. So we would pass this stuff out. Friday nights we would show movies out there in that village, and we were out in the village till 9, 10 o'clock a lot of nights, and got to the point where I never even carried a rifle. We didn't carry a rifle because we had no experiences in the whole year that we were there with any kind of problem. And the thing of it is, I went back to Vietnam a couple of years ago, and unfortunately I found out that the village chief had been murdered, killed because of cooperating with us.
By the time you were doing it, it was a secure area, and so the Viet Cong wasn't trying to make trouble for the village at that point. And you're right next to the base, so there wasn't a problem of transit going back and forth either. What else did you do by way of programs? Because you got pictures of pigs in here and things like that. Were you trying to help them develop their economy?
Yeah, the village had, the Vietnamese pigs were inbred for centuries, and they were very poor meat quality. And I went down to Saigon and brought back I think it was in December of '66, a basket with 18 little piglets, and the pilot of the caribou that came back on it was not too happy about having all these pigs in his plane, but brought them back. And when I left in June of '67, there were 185 piglets. Pigs multiply very, very fast. And what the villagers, it was a pig cooperative. The villagers took turns feeding, cleaning out, but they would share in the returns and stuff. And so this pig cooperative was quite a place that they were very proud of, the villagers. And we had, so at Christmas time we brought Santa Claus in. Santa Claus was a pathfinder that dressed up like Santa Claus, came in on a helicopter, and we went from village to house. The girls got the females, kids got dolls, and the guys got we had balls and a bunch of stuff. But it was at Christmas time they had never seen a Santa Claus, and that was interesting experience. So it was, and we took in, I'll never forget, one time walking through the village, it was in September, I think, yeah, it was September. All of a sudden, I noticed that the people were heading towards the middle of the village, which is where we showed films, and I said to Sergeant Rep, I said, where are the villagers going? And he said, they want to show us something. So I said, okay, so we went to the village, and the Korean soldiers, because the Koreans came to our area in the middle of June, middle of May, and they had the security on Highway 19 from all the way to Quinlan.
Mm-hmm.
And but anyway, Sergeant Rep said the Koreans want to show us something. So got to the center of the village, and there were probably 500 or more villagers watching, and the Koreans put on this Taekwondo display. And they had their Taekwondo team, which is organic to a Korean battalion.
Mm-hmm.
They have, I think it's 8 or 10 that are assigned to that division, and they put on a 20-30 minute demonstration of Taekwondo, and they were breaking bricks and breaking boards and everything. And so for the next 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks in our dispensary, had kids coming in with busted hands. And what they had done was they had tried to emulate to see if they could break a board.
Mm-hmm.
But what that demonstration did was it demonstrated to the Vietnamese that here are individuals that are the same size we are,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll break your bone, they'll break your body if you mess with them. And what I found out later was that this Taekwondo team had gone to every village in the area and put on this demonstration. And what that did was that raised the Korean, that you don't mess with the Koreans. And it was the most tremendous psychological thing I have ever witnessed. It didn't cost anything hardly.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't hurt anybody except the kids who came to the dispensary with busted hands. But it was that was really tremendous.
Yeah. Did you have much contact with the Koreans yourself?
No. When we went to, I had to make Highway 19 right outside of An Khe was what they call the An Khe Pass. Highway 19 had 2 passes. One was Mengyang Pass,
Mm-hmm.
which was up between An Khe and Pleiku, about midway, and there had been a lot of ambushes there.
Mm-hmm.
But then the An Khe Pass was 5 miles of switchbacks, and
Mm-hmm.
there were 2 or 3 almost 360 degree turns and stuff. And prior to June of '66, there had been a lot of Americans that had been killed in ambushes on Highway 19. But the Koreans got there, and that was. But I had to make a trip once a week from An Khe to Quinlan to pick up civic action supplies like sand and grain and stuff. And the Koreans had that highway secured, so that it got to where first couple months, we took our weapons with us. Towards the end, we never even bothered to carry weapons because we never didn't have a problem.
Mm-hmm. Now, you had your assignment, the same assignment, the full year tour that you were there?
Yeah.
Because normally they switched officers around. How did you wind up staying with the same job?
Well, initially when I went to Vietnam, it was my understanding with my wife and I was that it would be 1 year and I'd be home.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it was around October, so I enjoyed what I was doing, and I remember what General O'Connor had told me, that said I can get you because General O'Connor had gone from the 3rd Infantry to OPO, which is Officer Personnel Operations in the Pentagon, and he was in charge of all officers, Army throughout the Army assignments, and he had told me that he could get me a transfer to Adjutant General Corps if I wanted it, if I wanted to stay in, and maybe possibly he mentioned West Point as a possibility. So I sent my letter to my wife Sharon saying, I'm thinking about staying in the military. Or I'm thinking about writing a letter to General O'Connor to see if that transfer is possible, is still possible. And I thought she'd write me back a letter saying, it's either me or the highway.
Yeah.
You know? And she sent a letter back, because she liked the military, she said, go for it. So I typed out on my, the on the typewriters that we had back then, they weren't electric typewriters, typed out a letter to General A. O'Connor. I addressed it to General A. O'Connor, Pentagon, Washington, D.C. And 10 days later, I got back a letter from General Connor saying, when you complete your assignment in June, you will be branch transferred from the infantry to the AG, and you will go to the AG school. And so I sent that to my wife, and she said, go for it.
Okay. But in the meantime, there wasn't any question of your getting a different assignment during your year in Vietnam. You
No.
were just going to stay in the same one. I think maybe it was in combat units, they rotated you in and out.
Well, they thought I wasn't staying in as a career.
Okay.
If you were a career officer, they wanted you to get particular, because I was infantry then,
Mhm.
infantry branch. They wanted you to have some command experience.
Right.
And but at the time, I was made no bones about it that I was not planning to stay in the military. That I wanted to become a coach and a teacher.
Right.
And
And you were at the kind of the end of your enlistment, or one of the last part of that enlistment, because we got back home, you
Yeah.
didn't have the option to get out. Okay, so they put you in that particular slot. Now, during that year in Vietnam, did you get to go other places in Vietnam?
oh yeah.
Where else did you go?
Yeah, well, we made. I had to go to Saigon a couple times for paperwork. Like went to Saigon to pick up the piglets. I went to Saigon to get some other paperwork taken care of. I went up to. Let's see. I'm trying to think. Distinguish between my first time over there and then the second time when I went back. But that first time there, no, it was basically other than going to Quin Yan, and but then I was able to take an R&R took two R&Rs. I took an R&R to Hawaii to meet my wife in February, and then I had a opportunity to take an R&R to Tokyo towards the end of my thing. They had an extra R&R and nobody wanted to go, and so I said yeah. So it was did that, but oh, and I was on a caribou that was shot down. The experience there was that we had these Christmas presents that had been sent to us by this individual from South Carolina, Columbia, and we passed some toys out to the village, and we had some toys left over, and Sergeant Rep said, why don't we take these to Leprosarium, which was near Quin Yan. And so I said, okay. So Rep and I got on the plane, on the caribou, with a load of toys and stuff. We went to this leprosarium that was located in about 10 miles, 8 or 10 miles outside of Quin Yan, and it was run by the Catholic nuns. And it was the cleanest place I've ever seen. At that time, if a Vietnamese anybody in the family got leprosarium, the whole family was moved into
Got leprosy. They go to leprosarium, which is where you put them. Okay, yeah.
and we had a meal with the Catholic priests that were running it, and it was just an unbelievable, and they were so happy to get these presents, and it was just an unbelievable experience. Well, so Sergeant Rep and I got back and went to the airstrip, and I said to the and actually the airstrip was out. It wasn't the Quin Yan main strip. It was out in the boonies somewhere. And I said to the loadmaster, I said to the Air Force guy, I said, when's the next plane for An Khe leaving? And he said, it's leaving right now, and you better run if you want to catch it. So, and that was like around 5 o'clock. So Sergeant Rep and I took off at a little bit of a run. It was going real slow. And we got on, and these caribous have about 12 seats on each side. I think they seat about 24, 12 on each side. And you got windows every 3 or 4 seats. So there were about 8 people on the caribou. And so there were about 16 seats that were vacant. And so I chose this seat next to the window. And I heard this voice say, "Don't sit there." And I looked around the plane, and there wasn't anybody that said it. And I continued to buckle up, and it said, "Do not sit there." And I looked, and nobody had said it. But anyways, I said, okay. So I'll never forget, there was a chaplain sitting across aisle from me, and he hadn't said it. Nobody said anything. So I got up and unbuckled and went across the aisle and sat in that seat. So in the meantime, we had taken off, and all of a sudden there was a ping, and we looked up in the middle of the airplane. There was, on the C-119s, the Caribous, there was this line, hydraulic line, that controls the brakes, the steering, the rudder, the aileron, everything mechanical about that plane was this, and liquid was coming down, red liquid. And so we yelled, and the crew chief, who was up in the front, the Air Force crew chief, came back, and as soon as he saw that, he turned around and ran up to the front and started, you could see he was pouring stuff in. And the more he poured in, the more it came out. And in the meantime, I hadn't looked at what was happening outside, and I glanced out the window, and all of a sudden there was this rice paddy. And my life went in front of me. My life actually flashed in front of me, and because the ground was coming up, and we were going to, and we hit, and we hit, and we bounced, and we bounced, and we bounced, and finally we stopped, and we got out, and the Air Force in January of '67 had taken over the Caribous. The Caribous had been Army property of the Army, but the Air Force major who was flying this Caribou was shaking, and he said, "That's the worst landing I've ever had to make." He said, we don't have a drop of hydraulic fluid left." And so we went back into the plane, and they determined it was a 50 caliber, 51. The Vietnamese, North Vietnamese used the 51 instead of 50 caliber, but the machine gun slug had come up through the bottom of the plane and gone through the seat that I had originally sat in.
I'm going to pause right there because this tape is about up. Okay, so I'm going to okay, so we got to the point in your story where the plane has sort of crash landed onto the rice paddy, and you looked and realized.
Well, it was actually the runway. It had.
You had gotten to a runway then?
Well, the one that we had taken off from. He had managed to circle back. The thing it was, this was out in the very crude runway. The reason they used the Caribous was that the Caribou can take off in 700 feet and land in 1,000 feet or something like that. But it was you've seen pictures of the Caribou. It's an interesting plane, but. So you couldn't. This runway was a runway that was used by the Special Forces. When you say runway, it was a rudimentary.
Yeah, so it's just really a strip.
Yeah.
Did it have the PSP? Did it have the sort of the metal plank?
No,
or was it just dirt?
No.
Okay, so you get back to the place that you left from. Okay, and then kind of what happens at that point?
Well, when we took in. Landed and then searched and went around the plane and went in and then discovered that where the bullet had come up through that seat that I originally had sat in. But we ended up spending our night out there in the field, and I'll never forget there was a major that was a quartermaster major. I think he was a quartermaster branch, but he had some supplies and stuff that he was supposed to be handling, and he said that they'd been getting attacked quite frequently by the BC, and so it was a night that I didn't sleep real comfortably, knowing that it's past experiences, but nothing happened.
All right. Now, did they repair the plane and take off the next day, or bring in a new plane, or what happened?
No, that plane was, there was nothing wrong with that. Well, wait a minute, though. They needed to get the hydraulic fluid and everything. Yeah, I don't remember exactly. I think there was another plane that came in.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Now, are there other particular events that happened in that tour that stand out in your mind?
Yeah, there was a see, like these pictures here of the kids playing on the soccer field. There was that game, bat the ball around, you know, and this was the sick call. Now this is where we would show movies
Right.
out there, and the this is where we did our English and math classes in this small little building here. But the Cav had donated, soldiers had donated $9,000 and in our unit, and we were building a high school. There was no, the highest grade that in the area was 6th grade, and if they wanted to go to high school, they had to go to Quinyan. And so we were building this school. Oh, correct. I thought there's pictures of the school being built, and
Yeah. But anyway, so what do you recall about this? So did you finish the school before you left, or was that
no,
still going on?
it was in the middle. But the thing of it is, this cement mixer here delayed my leaving Vietnam by about a week, because this John Wharton from Columbia, South Carolina, had sent 2 large cement mixers on an LST that was that we were going to use in building the school. Our first the 11th Aviation Group soldiers had raised $9,000, and it was going to provide a 12-room, 2-story, 6 rooms on each floor school. And I was in charge, our unit was in charge of that, and so I paid the workers out of this fund. And John Wharton had sent these 2 cement mixers. Well, I knew the date they left South Carolina, and 1 cement mixer came in, and I said, "Where's the other one?" And they didn't know. So I got on a plane and went to Quinyan, and I went to Da Nang. I went up to Da Nang, which is where the Marines and Navy are located, and I went to the offloading area where this LST would have landed, and I said to this Marine sentry, I think he was like an E4 or something, E3 or E4, I said, "Have you seen a cement mixer lately here?" He said, "Well," he said, "over there there was one down there in the corner a few weeks ago, and the Marines were looking at it," and I said, "And what happened to it then?" He said, "I don't know." And he said, but I said, "Do you know where the Marines are?" And he said, "Yeah, they're up on top of that mountain there," which was Monkey Mountain. And so I somehow got a hold of a vehicle, 3/4 ton, and I was a captain, and I went up to the top of this mountain, Monkey Mountain, and there was a Marine signal unit that was up there on the top. And I got out of the vehicle, and a Marine lieutenant came running towards me and said, and I was a captain, so he saluted me, and he said, "Sir, can I help you?" And I said, "I've been told that there might be a cement mixer up here I'm looking for." And he said, "Oh no, I don't know anything about that." And I said, "Well, mind if I go look through the village, through a couple of the buildings?" So I started to walk towards this building, and he said, "Sir, I think I know what you're talking about." And that cement mixer was inside that building. So with this 3/4 truck, we hitched the cement mixer on this 3/4, and we had to go down the side of this Monkey Mountain, which was like basically a 1-lane road that was on the side of the mountain, and it was a couple of times it was real scary, because this 3/4 truck was pulling this cement mixer that weighed more than the truck did, and didn't have the brakes or anything. But anyway, we got it down and took it to this yard, and I wrote my wife saying that I'm going to be a couple days late because I'm waiting for the cement mixer to come in. So the cement mixer about a week later arrived at the engineer's yard, and that's the picture of it, and I made sure that it got delivered to the school, and then I came home. So I was about a week later than I should have been, and my wife was not too happy about that. But
All right. Now, once you get back home, now, is it Adjutant General School next, or what happens?
Yeah, I went to, the branch transfer had been set up so that I went to Fort Benjamin Harrison in Indianapolis for the AG, Adjutant General Career Course.
Mhm.
And so we were there from August 66 to June 67.
Now, was that all for the course, or were you
Well,
trained
that was
for part of
basically,
it and then
I was there about a month early, and the course was about 7 months.
Okay.
And went, and then I had orders to go to Fort Sheridan.
What did the course itself consist of? I mean, what would you do with the Adjutant General's office?
Well, the Adjutant General is basically paperwork, but postal comes under there, personnel actions come under there. At that time, computers were just coming in, and we had some classes on data processing, punch cards, and stuff. And Adjutant General branch does postal, and at one time it did pay, but that shifted to the finance branch. But the personnel actions, all of your divisions have personnel officers that are, making sure that everybody's in the right positions and stuff. And mail.
Do they have anything to do with disciplinary procedures or anything like court martials or things like that?
Well, processing court martials and stuff, yeah, but not. I was my second tour, because I hadn't been to Vietnam as a adjutant general officer. They decided that I needed to go back to Vietnam to learn about what the adjutant general does in war. So, let's see.
But before that, though, you spent time at Fort Sheridan in Illinois, right?
Yeah, spent 2 years at Fort Sheridan, and 1 year I was running the the ROTC program. And at that time, 5th Army headquarters was at Fort Sheridan, and the Adjutant General Corps was in charge of the of ROTC, and there were 50 colleges in the 5th Army was located. 5th Army headquarters was at Fort Sheridan, and it controlled basically the Midwest. It went all the way down to Missouri, east to Ohio, west to Illinois, Kansas, I think, too. Yeah, Kansas, Iowa. So we had 50 colleges that had ROTC programs. And their commissions came, we processed their commissions, we processed paperwork and stuff like that. So for close to a year, I was with that, the ROTC program. And then
Well, but that's got to be kind of an interesting time to be involved in ROTC, because it's like 1968, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and there's a lot going on in the country by then, anti-war movements and protests and this kind of stuff, and there are colleges that were shutting down ROTC or threatening to. How much of that were you aware of or had any dealings with?
Not really. I did have, I remember our office had a lot of say in whether or not an individual qualified for. I remember processing a couple individuals who had gotten in, not major problems, but minor problems but we felt that they still deserved their commission because it wasn't a, there wasn't a whole lot.
Okay, so the operations of your office weren't really affected by the anti-war movement then, or?
Not really.
Okay.
No.
Now, with these ROTC programs at colleges and places where there wasn't a lot of student activism, or did you have them at big state universities, or?
Oh yeah, all of the University of Michigan, Michigan State, all of the universities in the basically
Right.
in the Midwest
Right.
came under us, and that's why there were 52 colleges in in the Midwest that had ROTC, and if they had an ROTC program and they were in the Midwest, they came under Fifth Army.
Mhm.
And but basically, we were more of an orders cutting.
Right.
We cut their orders for them to go on active duty. We cut their orders for commissioning. We cut we basically paperwork.
Mhm. And then did you live up north of Chicago then at that
Yeah,
time?
we lived up in Zion, Illinois, and Zion is about 15 miles north of Fort Sheridan.
Mhm.
But every day if you come down the shoreline, we would go by Great Lakes Naval Training Station.
Mhm.
Great Lakes was at right south of Waukegan. Zion is between Kenosha and Waukegan.
Yeah, so it's
right?
almost in Wisconsin, but not
Almost,
quite.
yeah. You're familiar with that, huh? Yeah.
All right.
And so it was an enjoyable time, but then my first year was with the ROTC. Then my second year there was running a printing plant, and we at that time the Army did most of their printing. I had 55 individuals that worked in a printing plant, and about 40 of them were civilians, and there were 10 or 15 military that were doing it. But we had Davidson presses, and we had iTech cameras, I remember, and it was bookbinding was very, but we had responsible for, I'll never forget, if a president dies, the Army, Fifth Army had the Midwest, and during my time, Truman's funeral took place, I think.
Because Truman, Eisenhower, and Johnson all died pretty close
Yeah,
together.
yeah. Well, Fifth Army controlled Truman because he was from Missouri,
Mhm.
and Eisenhower from Kansas, and we had they had, oh geez, when whichever one it was that died, it was either Eisenhower or Truman. We had thousands of pages of paperwork that went through our printing presses and stuff. But that was an interesting experience, running a printing shop and not knowing anything about printing, but having the control of that was something.
Mhm. Now, during the time you're at Fort Sheridan, were you aware you were going to have to go back to Vietnam again, or did they spring that on you somewhere during that stay?
They sprung it on me. No, I really had not anticipated having to go back. But when I called or checked it out, they said, "Well, you haven't had a Adjutant General tour in combat," so that was that.
All right. And so when did you start that assignment?
Started that in let's see, July of 70.
Mhm.
Let's see.
Yeah, as you got August of 70 down here on what I wrote down, but
Yeah.
The summer of 1970.
August of 70.
Okay. And where were you assigned in Vietnam this time, or what unit?
I went back to I was assigned to the 4th Infantry Division, and the 4th Infantry was in the process of going home. So they had been located up at Pleiku,
Mhm.
and they were on. They brought them to An Khe, which was halfway between Quy Nhon and Pleiku, and so they were situated in the same place, exactly the same place that I was at 3 years ago, and An Khe had. But I never got a chance. You couldn't. I tell you what. When I was there in '66, you could go anywhere you wanted. You didn't need to carry a weapon off base. And like I said, I was out in the village 2 or 3 nights till 9, 10 o'clock at night. And when I went back the second time, you could not leave the base without an armed escort. The MPs had to escort you. You could stand outside the building and watch firefights and watch things going on that the enemy was doing. It was 180 degrees different than what I had experienced 4 years ago. It was sort of sad.
Did you get to go back to the village and visit
No.
there? So this wasn't allowed, or you didn't want to, or?
Combination of both, I think. No, it just, it was not, pleasurable. But, and then so then, when the 4th Infantry went home,
Well, what were you doing while you were with the 4th Infantry?
processes, I was Special Actions Officer. And one of the things that when the division leaves to go home, you've got to close up all the records. Well, there were boxes and boxes of individuals who had gone home and never come back.
Mm-hmm.
And those had to be sorted out. We had to, one of the things that was in the Special Actions was congressionals. Now, the Army has a procedure for handling a congressional, and the 4th Infantry was not different than any other infantry division with 20,000 soldiers. We averaged 150 congressionals a month.
Okay, explain what a congressional is.
Well, if somebody is not happy with what's going on, they would send a letter to their congressman, and a lot of those, over 50%, went to Kennedy, because he was. But it also went to the other congressional
Mm-hmm.
people. And the problem is that if the soldier would send a letter to Senator Kennedy and say, I'm having this problem, well, the senator would send it to the Department of Army at D.C. D.C. would send it to Hawaii, USAPAC, which is the Pacific Area Command. And then Hawaii would send it to MACV, which was a military command in Vietnam,
Mm-hmm.
and then it would come down to the division,
Mm-hmm.
and then from the division, and then it would come to my office. Then I had to go out, I'll never forget, one of the congressionals was, the guy wrote that my mother sent me cookies, and for Christmas, and I didn't get them until the middle of January, and they were all bad.
Mm-hmm.
They were bad. And why did it take so long to get them? Well, the thing of it is, you had my unit. I had an interviewer. They would have to write out questions for the company commander to answer. Why didn't this individual get his cookies? and they would and different questions, and then. So this letter would go to the company commander, and the company commander would do something. Well, actually, it would go to the battalion commander, brigade commander,
Mm-hmm.
from the division to the brigade, brigade to the battalion, battalion to the company, then the first sergeant, and the company commander, and then it would come back up the chain. And the thing of it is, all of these general officers, each division is commanded by a general officer, was very conscious of the fact that their appointments have to be approved by Congress. And you did not want to tick off a congressman, because Kennedy, if he got your name, he could kill that appointment, that advancement from lieutenant general from major general to lieutenant general, or what have you. But so they were very cautious of that. So by the time, but the thing was, I had an individual who had a college degree in English, and he would write out these replies, and then I would approve it, and I would send it to the chief of staff. The chief of staff didn't like it, so he'd send it back 2 or 3 times, and then it would go to the general, and the general didn't like it. It would come back. Sometimes it would spend a month going back and forth, being recomposed and everything. I'll never forget this one guy wrote his congressman saying, I've had 6 Article 15s, I've had 3 court-martials, I've earned my 212 discharge, and he was sitting in Saigon. He wanted his bad conduct discharge.
But he's in the military jail there.
Yeah.
Long been jail, yeah.
But the thing is, this congressional thing was unbelievable when you see, because if the soldier, it was a 6-month process. If they'd gone to their IG, it could have been resolved, Inspector General, right within the unit, or
Mm-hmm.
gone to the chaplain. Somebody wanted to leave to go home for some emergency or something. They write their congressman. They didn't get it. So the other thing, though, when a division leaves, you have to account for all of the individuals that left and never came back.
Mm-hmm.
And I discovered boxes of files of these individuals. They'd gone home on leave, or they'd gone somewhere on leave and just took off. Didn't bother to come back, and you got to close out their records and stuff. So when the division leaves a combat area, it's unbelievable all the different things that have to be done. So we spent 4 months processing records and stuff, and then from there they sent me up to the Americal Division, which was up in Chu Lai. Americal was the largest division in Vietnam, because it had, most divisions have 3 brigades, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Brigade. The Americal had 4 brigades, the 189th, the 188th, the 11th, and the 196th. So it was 22,000. Division is usually around 16,000, but Americal Division was 22,000. So I went up there for, let's see, for 8 months, and was a, let's see, what did the heck, well, Craigs, now wait a minute, what did I do up there in Americal? Well, just Adjutant General, as a,
So still personnel records, or processing people's paperwork, or what were you doing?
Down it. I cannot recall
We'll take a
exactly.
different angle.
Huh?
What was the base at Chu Lai like at that point? How was it different from An Khe, or?
Never got into, well, once, I left the base one time just to take a convoy from from Chu Lai up to Da Nang, and see what Da Nang was like. Oh, now wait a minute. Oh, no. I was Special Actions Officer for the AG, and under that I had the orders section. I cut orders. We cut orders for individuals going home on emergency leave or R&R. I had the message processing section, that messages that come in for the headquarters had to be controlled. And I'll never forget, I had an NCO, Sergeant Leita, that came to me one day and said, "Sir, we got a problem." "What's wrong?" He said, "We got this top secret message that came in, and there were 140 copies, and 149 had been, 150 copies, and 149 had been acknowledged receiving. We had a receipt that they acknowledged getting it." And he said, "We've got this one that we've not been able to track." And I said, "Where'd it go?" And he said, "It went to the Vietnamese headquarters up in Da Nang." So, and these top secret documents, I had a top secret clearance because I was running the message center, and that was one of the worst things you can get in the military, is a top secret clearance. So I got on a plane, caught a Caribou, and went up to Da Nang, and went to the Vietnamese headquarters, and I went to G3, which is operations in the military, the Vietnamese G3, and I went to this lieutenant colonel's office, and he's sitting at his desk, and I said, he said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "I'm looking for a document that was sent here, top secret, that was never acknowledged." "Oh, I don't know what you're talking about." I said, "Mind if I take a look through your drawers?" He opened his first drawer, and there it is. I said, "There's this message sitting in a drawer, top secret paper, paper on top of it, identifying." I said, "That's it. That's what I'm looking for. Sign this document, this acknowledgement of receipt document." And he signed it, and I left. But I'll never forget. He did. "I don't know what you're talking about," and the thing was sitting right there. So I had, and I had the special. The message center for the division headquarters. I had the what they called it. Oh, I was responsible for the daily bulletin. Every day, the division puts out a bulletin, but it had of what was happening, and it went through our office. We had to compose it, and then it would go to the chief of staff, and then for the general. So I had the order section, There were about four areas that were under special actions. That was what I couldn't remember, but now that I remember, it was basically a desk job, and that's what AG does.
Now, you mentioned that when you were back at An Khe with the 4th Division, the atmosphere, things were really quite different from they'd been earlier. What would you say morale was like in the Americal as far as you could tell from where you were?
It definitely had changed. The individuals, I never really saw drug activity, but in my first tour over there, there was no evidence of drugs at all. But my second tour, I remember, we had the division, the officers had special tents. I was in a six-person tent, but I remember going by the enlisted tents areas and stuff, and there would be evidence of drug activity, smoking and stuff like that. That wasn't. The attitude was different.
Was it more of a sense that the soldiers didn't want to be there, or?
A little bit of that, but I think basically though, no, the areas that I was responsible with and got involved with, the soldiers were real good.
Okay, so they're still going and they're still doing their jobs.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, was there much military activity going on at that time?
Well, there was with the units that I'll never forget sitting in the chapel on Easter Sunday, and the division commander came in, General Baldwin, saying that Firebase Marianne had been overrun during the night, and we'd lost quite a few individuals. But no, the areas that I was involved in, the soldiers did a good job, and I didn't see any slacking off really.
I guess we weren't really doing a lot of offensive operations anywhere. There wasn't that much happening at that point in time. Americal was kind of one of the last large formations still there.
Yeah.
The Marines were pretty much gone.
Yeah.
And so forth. So there's.
Well, the Marines were up at Khe Sanh, and that was when.
But not in 1970 or 71. They weren't.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Now, did you have any kind of larger sense at that point of sort of, how the war was going? I mean, we were in the process of withdrawing. Did you think that South Vietnam would be okay without us, or did you not think about that?
No, really didn't think too much. No.
What impression, if any, did you have of just the South Vietnamese military? Or
the connection I had with them was very positive. Other than that, slip up with the things with the important message. No, the problem that I have, the United States, we pulled out of there, and we left them with no resources. We did not. Congress in '74 they cut off the funding completely, so that because you hear the soldiers were saying, well, the Vietnamese just leaving their Jeep or whatever. They didn't have any spare parts. There wasn't any. They weren't able to conduct the way they should have been. I have a real good Vietnamese friend, General Thuy, or Colonel Thuy, who became very close to me and my wife, and we've been to his house a couple of times. He got to the United States finally, and I'm not sure if he's still living now or not, but down in Texas.
And did he have to go, did he get out of Vietnam at 75, or did he have to go through the re-education camp process before he came over?
No, he in 1940, he fought with the French up in the North, in North Vietnamese, and he spent 5 years in prison. And when he got out of prison, and his wife went to South Vietnam, but when he got out of prison in North Vietnam, the Vietnamese told him, "You don't. If we see you back here again, you're not going to survive." So he was with the South Vietnamese Army, and in 1966, when I went through the AG career course, we had 5 Vietnamese officers that had come over from the to go through to see how the American personnel system works and stuff, and we had him out to our house for Christmas dinner and Thanksgiving dinner, and a couple other times and stuff. So when I went back to Vietnam, he had back there. He arranged a party for me and stuff down in Saigon, and I've kept real close in contact with him. But when he came, he was down in the Delta, and he was a high-ranking colonel, and his daughter called him. He had 10 kids. His daughter called him from Saigon saying, "Dad, the Chase Manhattan Bank, the bank wants me to has offered me a job in New York. Should I take it?" Well, this was 3 days before the fall of Saigon, and he said, "Yeah, go ahead and take it." No, it was 3 days. Grab it and get out of there. And he went in and told his boss, he said, "I got to go back to Saigon to say goodbye to my daughter." So they were driving around Saigon, and he heard White Christmas on the radio. And White Christmas was the signal that the Americans were evacuating. And he said, "We got to get to the embassy." So I think his 8 kids were with him in his car. And they stopped at the embassy, and somehow he located his brother. And one of the Marine Guard that was inside the embassy, his brother had given Taekwondo lessons to the Marines. And this Marine recognized his Twee's brother, and said, "Come on, I'll get you out of here. Come on." He said, "I got my whole family with me." And he said, "Bring them all." So they got on one of the last choppers leaving Vietnam, and he spent some time in a camp, and he had 2 or 3 choices. He didn't contact me, but he had 2 or 3 choices, and one of them was he knew quite a few individuals in the American military, and he knew this chaplain that was from Texas, and so he went to Corpus Christi and became very successful in the business and stuff. But interesting story. He just he hates communists tremendously. I think he's developed dementia. His son his 10 kids. 5 of them became military, and 5 became very successful business people. But his one son is in the Coast Guard, and he's a commander now, I think, last I heard it. But he's a dentist, and he I contacted him about a year ago, and he said that his dad was not doing very good. But,
yeah. Okay. But that gave you a kind of distinctive impression of a certain side of that South Vietnamese military, then. Just by knowing him.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you got to the end of your tour there with the Americal, were you ready to go home and get out of Vietnam, or what was your feeling about it then?
Oh yeah. No, I wanted to get back to the family and stuff, and at that time I had orders to go to Fort Bliss, and so we came home. I got home and spent a couple weeks on leave, and then drove across country to El Paso, and spent 7 or 8 months. Got out. I got the letter in February of 70. February of
72.
'72, that I had the Army was cutting back, and so I sent some letters out and went back to Eastern Michigan to get my master's in teaching or in education. But in the meantime, though, I was determined that I was not going to let 9 years, 8.5 or 9 years go to waste. So I was left active duty in April of '72, and in May of '72 I was drilling with a reserve unit in Kalamazoo, and went from spent 5 years with the hospital unit in Kalamazoo, and then I spent, let's see, I went to them. I was there with them from '72 to '76, and then I joined. There was an opening over at Fort Sheridan for a executive officer for a medical unit, 149th Medical Detachment, and I got accepted to that, and spent 7 years there, and then and went on active duty in the summertime for running medical clinics. I ran Camp Ripley, the medical clinic, for 4 summers, and that would be like from June to middle of August. And then I did four summers at Camp Ripley and 4 summers at Camp Grayling in Michigan. So in the meantime was able to get, fortunate enough to get promoted to colonel, and with 31 years.
And then you had
Good
teaching
term.
jobs this whole time?
Huh?
You had jobs as a teacher at the same time, though, right?
Teacher plus, we had a farm in Niles. We raised Morgan horses, and at one time we had, the most horses we ever had was 33. But our kids went for 10 years. We were every weekend going to shows and stuff, and so it was between reserve duty, teaching. I was working on my doctorate. I finished my doctorate. Between the teaching, the military, the reserves, the horse activities, it was rather.
Yeah. And were you coaching sports too?
Huh?
Were you coaching too?
Yeah, I coached coached the division, the track team for a little bit at LMC, and I was athletic director for 5 years, from 6 years, from '72 to '78.
Okay, and that's at Lake Michigan College? Or,
Yeah, at Lake Michigan College, and then in the '80s I developed a weight loss, an exercise program, a wellness program called Dump Your Plump, and I had over 2,000 contests in the world. Matter of fact, there's still, I just sent some information to a woman that does wellness programs in New Zealand. She wants to, but Dump Your Plump is a team exercise contest. They get on teams of 5 to 10 people. They have to exercise 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, and they have to set a weight loss goal of 0 to 20 pounds. So if you could have a goal of 5, I could have a goal of 10, somebody else could have a goal of 20. If we make our goal, we get the same points. But if we don't make our goal, we don't get the points. But if we say we set a goal for 5 pounds and we lose 25 pounds, we don't get extra credit for it. It's not contest like the Biggest Loser. Same thing with exercise, 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. If you do that, you get maximum points. If you're a marathon runner and you run 2 hours a day, 7 days a week, you're not going to get any extra points. So it was an exercise contest. So
all right.
Been a filled life.
Now, I guess the other thing to bring in here finally would be, you've also been kind of active in retirement. You're with a group called Lest We Forget that does all sorts of things in this area.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about what they do.
Lest We Forget is a patriotic organization. Our goal is to increase the military, our heritage. We've got a saying that when a soldier dies without writing a story, a library burns, or when a veteran dies without writing a story, a library burns. And we've managed to capture over 350 approximately stories of veterans local, but we've also done World War II and Vietnam reenactments at the airport and at the beach in St. Joe. Unfortunately, schools have taken a lot of history out of the curriculum, and our, you know, today kids have, some of them don't even know who we fought in World War II or who bombed us at Pearl Harbor. And so our mission, unless we forget, is to illuminate the past.
Mhm. And that's really why we're here doing these interviews. And
Yeah.
we have done a whole series already with Lest We Forget, and this session is actually kind of a follow-up for that. So I'd just like to thank you for that effort and for taking the time to talk to me this morning.
Well, thank you for spending all this 2 hours here. Time went by fast.
All right.